Hi, I'm Christine and this is my friend and colleague Matt, and today we are talking about how to get out of your head and into the world. And in particular, we wanted to start discussing about why it's so hard to just get started with stuff, and especially stuff that feels really important to us. Like, why do we get so stuck in our heads when actually we know it would be to our benefit to do that thing, to create that thing, to put that thing out into the world? Why we find it so difficult. So we're going to start, I think, with I want Matt really to start with a story that he told me, and I love the story of something where from his younger years, where he was stuck and didn't take the steps he should have taken. And I just think it's a lovely example of what lots of us go through. So Matt, I think you should tell us.
I'll embarrass myself. That's
yeah, I
fine.
think you should embarrass yourself.
I'll out myself. Yeah, so we were just thinking about examples where we've seen this in our own lives, and there was one very recent, but one sort of when I was a teenager, and I used to be sort of a classic bedroom DJ. And we were talking about how funny it is, like the thing that you'd most love to happen, to go and play, sort of clubs in Ibiza or wherever else it is. For me, at least, it was the thing that I whilst I was, very effective in lots of other areas of my life, academically, socially, organizing stuff. The thing that I would have most loved to have happened, I really didn't take any constructive action to. And there was always lots of good reasons why that was a really difficult thing to do, but there was this kind of disconnect. There was this kind of waiting for, I don't know, life to invite me or something to happen that was going to magically transform my wishful thinking into reality. And we were kind of wondering, well, what's up with that? Like, why is it so hard to take action on the things that actually often are the things we care most about?
And I think the biggest problem in what you've just said is that we have the ability to imagine what it would be like to play Ibiza, and then just having that eternal hope that someone will discover us without, as you say, taking any of the steps that are needed for someone to discover us, right? And it's the same when you're job hunting. Wouldn't it be lovely if I could get that job at this company that I'd really love to work for? But you never speak to a single person in the company. You don't know what they're looking for, so you never acquire the right skills. You don't take any of the steps needed, but it would be lovely if I could have that. And it's like, if we can eternally hope for stuff, but we never have to prove whether we were worthy of a job there or even try to get there, then we never have to disabuse ourselves of, I could work for them, And I think that's part of the problem. Like, you could sit in your bedroom and you could believe that you were a great DJ in your bedroom, and no one ever had to disabuse you of that.
Yeah, it's like sort of sitting in the status quo. There's this superficial sort of comfort, like the comfort of you can keep sort of imagining it and maintaining the fantasy, but equally the comfort of of not putting yourself out there and sort of risk being successful or not being successful. There's some superficial comfort in not exposing yourself in that way, which is just perverse, because really sort of all the kind of the value, whatever, however, sort of close or far you get from that goal, is going to come from the experience you have on the road. And in many ways, there's nothing easier than taking some action. Like, when we haven't got loads on it, when we're not really, sort of attached to something happening in our lives, it's our nature just to kind of get into action and kind of do stuff. And I'm sure we've all got examples where we do that without thinking. But yeah, there's something sort of insidious about, like, that status quo. There's something comfortable about not putting ourselves on the line. And I think, Christine, one of the things you said, which I thought was really, really helpful, was like, we think we're amazing sort of fortune tellers. We think we are mind readers, like we know what other people are going to think of us, and what's going to happen. And oftentimes we project that, you know, things aren't going to work out, that, you know, that we're not good enough, that that actually it's not even worth bothering, because
no
we
one's
kind
going to
of
love your
completely know
mixtape.
how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, that you already assume no one's going to love your mixtape, so you don't send it out, right? And I think that's very interesting because, you know, one of the things I'm always saying to my clients when they start making predictions, so they often say, oh, he won't like that, or I know what he'll think of that. And I say, are you as rich as Paul McKenna? And they say no. And I say, well, don't assume that you can mind read them, because only Paul McKenna's getting paid to do that. It's like, you know, you can't do other people's thinking for them, right? And that's so key. You can only do your thinking and put out what makes sense to you, or do what makes sense to you, and whatever comes back is what comes back. But you can't predict what people are going to make of what you do, or what you say, or how you show up. You know, I can show up and think I'm being really smiley. Like I thought when I was teaching one day, somebody was watching me and I thought I was having a great time. It felt good. I felt like I was running a great class. And then she said, oh, you didn't smile. What was wrong with you? And I thought, didn't I? What was wrong? And I immediately started to go, well, maybe I should smile a bit more. And the next time I felt really tense, because I was thinking, oh, I've got to smile. Oh, hang on, I haven't smiled for 10 minutes. I've got to smile again. But actually, that was just her view of it. She was a much more smiley person than me. It had nothing to, I can reflect on it and I can maybe think, well, maybe that's how it's coming across, but it was her idea of how it was coming across. It wasn't, the class was going well. I knew it because I could feel it, you know, and people were engaged and enjoying it. And it didn't matter that I wasn't, you know, didn't have a goofy grin on my face for the whole class. Do you know what I mean? And I think that we can put too much store by, you know, doing things how other people think they should be done, or how other people see the world, and forget that we have you know, our experience of it might be very different to theirs. And we were talking as well about that thing of judging how stuck, or how much work you should do, how much action you should take by your feelings. So when you were sitting in your bedroom, Matt, you know, it had, as you say, that perverse comfort in that your good feeling was, I can play this music and feel really great, and no one has to tell me it's not great. And so you wait for a good feeling. People often say to me when they're coming for coaching, I want to build confidence. I want to learn how to stop procrastinating. I want you to give me tips on how to, you know, take action. And I want to be held accountable, so I take more action. And what they're not seeing is that they're waiting for something to change all the time before anything can happen. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think sort of there's this kind of, yeah, especially when it's something that you perceive as difficult, or it's a big job, or it's something that's challenging, of kind of waiting till, you know, and we see this, you know, sort of just in every day, like, I'll wait till I'm in a better, I won't have that conversation, I'll wait till I'm a better mood, or, you know, sort of I'll leave that till I'm feeling better. And I think there's this kind of there's this sort of projection that, you know, sort of something will be easier or harder at some other sort of point in time, and that, you know, sort of I need to wait for the circumstance to change so that my feeling will change, and therefore I'll be better equipped to do it. And, you know, and it just misunderstands the relationship between thought and feeling, in that, you know, as you were saying, Christine, that our feeling is just our barometer, is just our feedback loop on, you know, where we're at mentally at that moment. And so if where we're at is apprehensive, and, you know, and thinking something's difficult, we're going to perpetually be in a feeling, well, that thing looks difficult, and it may be that right moment never comes.
And I think that what you just said is absolutely crucial. You know, your feelings are only ever reflecting what you're thinking about in that moment, moment to moment. So a feeling is a shadow of whatever thought's just gone by. You get that feeling, but what we get left with is the feeling of anxiety, of panic, of it's not going to be okay, of I might fail. And we get left with that feeling, and we have to attribute it to something because the thought's already gone and we can't see the thought. And so what happens is we attribute it to the future, to what people might say, to whether we're a good person or not, to what people think of us. But your feelings don't know anything about you. They don't even know you exist. They don't know anything about the future. They don't know anything about the person you just had an interview with, or whether that means you're a good person or not. Your feelings aren't a measure of those things. Your feelings are just a measure of, that's what I'm thinking in this moment. And they can't tell you anything else. And we put way too much store by our feelings and wait for a good feeling before we take action. If we're in a bad feeling, we're having a bad day, we can't get anything done, I've had a bad day. We wait for things, we're always constantly waiting for things to change before we can take action. And that's a huge mistake because, you know, it's a funny thing, isn't it? You get set a piece of work, you got 3 weeks to do it, you procrastinate, you wait for a good feeling, you wait for things to change, but suddenly on the last day before the deadline, all of those reasons why you were procrastinating have all gone out the window. And what you've done is you've stored all of the stress up, and now you're really not doing your best work. You're not putting in your best stuff because you've put off and put off and put off, and now you've got to deal with it. And there always is a reckoning that comes with procrastination, always a reckoning, but we seem to be able to ignore that in favor of staying in a good feeling all the time. And I don't know why we do that. If I knew the answer to that, procrastination would not have been the first big word I learned. You know, it was the first thing people said about me, you're procrastinating. And I was only young, and I must have, even then I was putting off doing things, you know, but there always is a reckoning with procrastination. And that if we just could learn to take our feelings less seriously and go, well, yeah, I'm not feeling great, but what the hell, I'll get on anyway, then our lives, we know, would be much easier. And you said something, Matt. You said something about... So if you were to, Go on, sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
I was going to say, you said something about that, about feeling that... sorry, I can't think. I've lost it.
Don't worry. Maybe it'll come back. No, I was just going to ask you if you had kind of one piece of advice with that lifetime of procrastination in mind. What would be what would be the one thing you'd point to that you'd found most helpful?
I think it is to be more suspicious of my feelings. You know, that false idea that if I'm feeling good, then I need to stay in that good feeling and not, you know, that if I have to do something that I perceive as difficult, that's going to be hard, it's going to give me a bad feeling. And I'm trusting my feelings all the time to guide me as to whether I should be doing something or not doing something. And I think over the years, I have learned to become much more suspicious of my feelings as to whether they're a true barometer of what I should be doing in life, whether I should be taking action or not taking action, or, you know, I'm much more suspicious of them. I realize that, as you said to me when we were discussing this beforehand, you know, that there is that common sense or wisdom that when you're in it, when you're in that natural state of, I have no thinking about this, it feels effortless and easy, and I'm just getting it done and I'm in flow, that's because I'm taking action and getting the reward and doing it anyway without waiting for something to change before I can take that action. And for you?
Yeah, it's a natural segue from that, actually. I think it's just that, that all the good stuff comes from taking some action, and generally that action is some form of interaction with other human beings to take something out of your head and into the world. And whilst it can seem like the biggest step in the world, actually once you've got over that, suddenly that tends to break down the kind of the mental dam. And and with each conversation and each sort of thing that you might do, that reality evolves, and you realize that you hadn't been dealing with the reality, you've just been dealing with your imagined, sort of made up version of what was going on. And once you get into action, that tends to sort of get that tends to kind of break down, and you're freer to deal with stuff as it actually is. Now, sometimes that might tell you were right. This is absolutely ludicrous to be trying to do this. This is not viable for you right now. Or it might tell you, actually, there's different ways of thinking about it. It's more available. There's next actions to take that that show you a kind of a way forward. But as long as you're in your head, and as Christine says, we all know the kind of the telltale signs when we're stuck in our head. Then nothing good can come of that. The only good thing can come is from taking some action, even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah, so it's that misunderstanding that you need motivation before you can take action, and actually the action is its own motivation, and that all the analysing and thinking and predicting of the future and assuming you already know the future is never ever going to be helpful. Because, as you say, you only can start seeing what the next steps are once you take a step. As a good friend of ours, Jamie Smart, always says, when you're trying to write a book or create something or do something creative, you only need to put your headlights on and see the next 20 yards in front of you in the fog. You don't need to wait for the fog to clear before you can see where you're going. You just need to see the next step. And I think that's the thing. We all think that if we can line all our ducks up in a row and then get the motivation and get going, it will all pan out exactly as we planned it. But we know that we're okay once we get going, and the reward, as you say, is taking that first step. And I think if you can get to the point where you can be more suspicious of your feelings, if you start thinking of it, it feels uncomfortable to do that, that there's something not right. And that's a signal that you're getting stuck, starting to procrastinate, and then just do something really small, and that will be its own momentum. And then the motivation starts to come from that. The motivation doesn't come first. I think that's the myth of what we all do when we wait for stuff to change and for circumstances to change and for people to discover us before we get anything done, And I think I also wanted to say that, no one has ever achieved something or created something or invented something. All those people who have done those things were not any different to you or I. There was nothing intrinsically different about them. Even if they had a high IQ of 180, there was nothing intrinsically different. They just got on with doing the thing that I won't do. So as an example of that, I'm always saying to my friend, the only difference between Richard Branson and I, and why he's rich and has all those companies and I don't, is there's nothing different about us except that I have a lot of thinking about making a fool of myself for publicity, and he doesn't. And so it's where our thinking converges with the limited thinking we have about what we're capable of, who we are, the ideas we have about ourselves, of what other people think about us and what we assume we make of us, is the stuff that holds us back. And where people look like they're achieving what we can't, it isn't that they have some superpower that we don't have. It's that they just somehow have found a way to drop their thinking about those things that we think limit us. So, Matt, if you'd have known all this, you could have been a world famous DJ, the next Calvin Harris. And we've all now lost that in our lives because you didn't come out of the bedroom.
Although I do reflect that maybe there was an element of wisdom at play in terms of the lifestyle of a superstar DJ might not have been so great for my health. So it might have been self-preservation.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know anything about your music taste, but you know, we might all have been saved from some terrible tunes that you put out.
Well, that's kind of you to suggest that, Christine.
Yeah, so I mean, is there anything else that we can say about this that might be helpful? I mean, I think that you know, we do understand, don't we, both of us, the toil of working from your bedroom or your office or whatever, especially when you're applying for jobs, especially when you're having to do stuff where there's no instant gratification, there's no feedback, and there's no pat on the back. And you still have to keep motivating yourself and moving forward. And we know how difficult that is, don't we?
Yeah, and I think in our, one of our next topics, we're going to talk about that, how it can be so hard to stay motivated when we're looking for the kind of the feel-good hit that comes from those little successes, those little achievements. And especially when we're creating something at an early stage or looking for work, there can be an absence of those external reinforcements or kind of pats on the head that mean that we need to trust in something else and look to something else to you know to be the source of that motivation and keep us on track. But yeah, no, I think that's all for now.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so we'll see you next time, and you can catch up on our other recordings, and we'll see you for the next topic. Thanks very much. Bye.